everyone's happy about with the more involvement we can get, the better. Cool. So yeah, we'll just move forward with Matt's presentation.
All right. So this morning, Matt Kondratieff and I are here. We're on in a coffee shop, in case you look in the background or whatever and say, wow, look at the nice office that Matt and Dave have. That's not exactly the case. This is something that years ago, when I moved out to Colorado back in 2008, I was asked by a friend to kind of hang out with Matt Kondratieff and plan a training course. And in a series of events, I found out Matt Kondratieff here was a really big shed head, which means he wanted to look for elk antlers and deer antlers. And we happen to live in a place where there's a lot of access to land to look for deer antlers and elk antlers. So we went hiking one day, and he started telling me about this program that they were doing through Colorado, then Division of Wildlife, and Buena Vista Correctional Facilities in the state prison service, where they were looking to use inmates to restore streams. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool, a little scary, because, you know, generally we're having problems with just any contractor restoring stream, much less, you know, inmates. And Matt's going to talk to you a little bit about kind of where the program went, what they did, and then kind of, you know, our dreams for what we could possibly do in programs like this in the future that may or may not be related to state programs like CPW. So with that, Matt, I'll let you kind of move forward, and we're kind of set up to be kind of informal today. So if people have questions, ask questions as we go. Raise your hand, I'll watch the screen. And then if Matt gets done and doesn't, and seems like we have too much time because we got started early, then I'll just ask him awkward questions. And if we don't have enough awkward questions, then we'll start singing Christmas carols. And if we don't sing any Christmas carols, then I guess we're done early. So
okay.
All right, there
sounds good. Thank you.
And Matt, by the way, is a let's see, you're a aquatic research scientist for Colorado Parks and Wildlife.
Yes.
You've been there for
17 years.
17 years.
I know, I can't believe
and before that, you worked for Wyoming Fish and Game as a regional
fish biologist in Pinedale.
In Pinedale, yeah. Mm-hmm. So you graduated from CSU with your master's degree in what year?
That was actually in 2003.
In 2003,
got my master's.
Gotcha. Yeah. So good. Good. So with that,
very good.
Talk to us about the inmates.
Yeah, very good. And in my aquatic research scientist role at Parks and Wildlife, I do stream habitat investigations. So pretty much most of the research that I'm involved with has to do with evaluating and monitoring different stream restoration projects across the state of Colorado, and doing fish passage type research as well. So evaluating, monitoring those through pit tag studies or other types of methods, but mostly fish passage and stream restoration. So Dave invited me, first of all, very, very good to be here. Good morning. Dave invited me because he actually helped me a little bit at times with working with the inmates program that we had a privilege of working with to do these restoration projects. So this is hopefully some interesting information for you, because this is kind of, I would say, kind of maybe a non-traditional way of doing stream restoration. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of creative and I like to think outside the box. This was definitely outside the box. And so I hope it piques your interest, maybe sparks some creativity for you, and what you know, if you have never thought about tapping into the resources of working with people like inmates. So anyway, so this program that got started in 1997 was a partnership between Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Buena Vista Correctional Facility. And the two people that began the program, there was a warden in the prison system named Warren Dieslin, and another individual from Parks and Wildlife named, it was, I want to say it was Larry Coachman, or Coachman, was Eddie Coachman, sorry. And those two individuals way back in 97 met. They both spent a lot of time up in South Park. Obviously, they were in Buena Vista area. And they had this crazy vision to like, hey, you know, we have lots of miles. In this case, up in South Park, there was like 58 miles of accessible streams. These are streams that on the South Platte River where there's easements for angler access. Most of the areas were degraded. So Eddie Coachman's like met with this warden and said, hey, what can we do? We have all this this real estate, but need to get a lot of work done. And at that time, the prison system was allowed to take crews of inmates from the facility within a day's drive from the facility. Obviously, going overnight with inmates was a bit more complicated and wasn't allowable. So they started looking around going, hey, there's all this opportunity within driving distance to work on these projects. Do you think it's possible we could use the inmates to construct these restoration projects? So so they started meeting. There was a particular prison guard in Buena Vista who had an extensive background with heavy equipment and servicing heavy equipment. So, you know, things like loaders and excavators and graders, those kind of motor graders, big heavy equipment. So what was really interesting is he was identified and he stepped up and decided, I don't want to be a prison guard anymore. I would do this as an instructor. And maybe what we could do is come up with a program that we work with the inmates, teach them the fundamentals of working around heavy equipment, servicing equipment. In fact, get them their driver's license, their CDL, so that they can also be certified to run, you know, semi trucks or dump trucks, those kind of things. And I'll be an instructor for that since I have that background. Then an individual from Parks and Wildlife who was in the research section, my predecessor in aquatic research, named Rod Van Velsen, became involved, and he was at the time working with a guy that you might have heard of, Dave Rosgan, to design one of their first restoration projects in South Park. And at that time, Rod was struggling with how to do this for a realistic price that wouldn't cost a ton of money. They had a limited budget at that time. And so Tom Bowen from the Parks or from Correctional Facility and Rod Van Velsen from Parks and Wildlife started meeting together, and they came up with their first project using the inmates in 1997. Good morning, Billy. I see
Good
Billy.
morning.
So they started working on a project. Their first project was completed in 1997. They had a crew of about maybe 12 to 15 inmates from Buena Vista. And the Vocation Heavy Construction Technology Program, as they called it, was born. The neat thing that happened after the first year is they decided that what they needed was a transition, though, for these inmates. Once they'd gotten through their training and get their CDL, their driver's license, they wanted to transition out into the private sector so that they could find a good paying job. So the program partnered with the Colorado Contractors Association, which at the time there were like 5, I think, or 6 different large construction companies that were part of the Colorado Contractors Association. The Colorado Contractors Association agreed to hire these individuals, even though they had felony charges or other, a criminal record, but they agreed, they took a risk and decided to hire the individuals that graduated from this program and allow them to work for their company, you know, through the CCA, put them into positions where they can work heavy construction. So that was the key ingredients. And so again, and then I guess the other aspect of this was there became an advisory board, and the advisory board consisted of individuals from the Colorado Contractors Association, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and the Buena Vista Correctional Facility. And their job, they would meet like quarterly with each individual inmate, and they would go over like a plan, like how are you doing? What's your plan for recovery or for getting out? You know, when you get out, what kind of jobs are you going to be looking for? How can we support you? What kind of lessons are you learning through this experience? And really their job was to come alongside and encourage each individual inmate as they were making these changes through the construction work they were doing, and hopefully ultimately getting out into society, into getting a job in the private sector. What's really neat is that the graduates, the individual inmates were required to have a minimum of 18 months of being a part of the program. So in reality, most individuals that I worked with were there for about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, worked in the program, gaining those skills, and also being encouraged and kind of mentored through the process. But from 1997 to 2007, those inmates did a total of about 10 miles, a little over 10 miles of stream restoration in South Park. I didn't come along until the very end of 2006 to start working with these inmates, and I worked with them for another 10 years until 2015, and we were able to get another, I think it was only another maybe 4 miles of restoration accomplished during that time. When I came along, we did a lot of work with experimental treatments, in particular one that you might be familiar with called toewood. So that slowed us down a lot in playing with toewood. But on the Dream Stream, for instance, which is between Spinney Mountain Reservoir and 11 Mile Reservoir, we put nearly a mile of toewood on a section of stream that we are still currently monitoring, evaluating that project for both in terms of fish habitat and geomorphology. But so anyway, I'm jumping around a little bit, but the way the program works, an individual inmate is supposed to be involved in the program for at least 18 months. And during that time, inmates installed somewhere around 22 different treatment types. That included things like lots of experiments with large wood. These were treatments designed to help with bank instability, so bank stabilization, fisheries habitat, and I'd say treatments that were designed to help with establishing and helping with river natural processes. So things like boulder clusters, toewood, log spurs, cross veins, and all those kinds of things. So so anyway, that was the sort of gist of what we did together during that first initial construction phase. The program since has unfortunately not, we haven't been able to continue it since 2015. But overall, we've been able to get, like I said, somewhere around 15 miles of stream restoration accomplished at a fraction of the cost what we would get from because of some of the cost savings we were able to realize through using the inmates. And I have a couple slides and can talk about that. But that's just kind of a summary, kind of high level summary, how the program got established, who the key individuals were. We had our Colorado support us, the state government support us in this program to, to accomplish those goals. The thing that was really satisfying about the program, looking back, was our rate of recidivism. So there's a recidivism rate that is the rate of an individual, a prisoner, once they are done serving their time, they go back, into society, what is the rate of an individual or an individual's chances of then recommitting a crime and going back to prison? So the recidivism rate is the rate of individuals that say go out of the prison system, and once they're done serving their time, they don't go back to prison. And so that rate for the graduates of our program that went through the vocation heavy construction technology program was about 70%, meaning 70% of the individuals who graduate out of the program did not return to prison, whereas the general population was less than 10%, around 6 or 7%, which is a really sad statistic. It means that the majority of inmates that do go through the prison system will return to the prison system because they recommit another crime. So that statistic was a big deal, and clearly showed, I think, that through the program and what we were able to accomplish, we were able to change not just people in terms of their ability to get a good paying job, which, by the way, most of the graduates that graduated from the program got into jobs. The average salary was between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. We had one individual graduate from the program, become a foreman on a crew with, I want to say with CDOT, and he was making almost $74,000 a year out of prison. And that was a real key, I think, to the success of this program, was getting people the skills they needed after prison, their time in prison, get them skills, and that they could go into a high-paying job and not kind of return back, default back into some of the behaviors and things that got them in trouble in the first place in order to raise, create an income. So anyway, those are some of the, that's some of the background from the program. I have a little bit more I want to share from you on, if I can advance the slide. This is just some of the, why were we doing restoration in South Park? South Park's located in the center of Colorado, near a town called Fairplay and Hartselle. Why were we doing it in the first place? Well, the goal from Parks and Wildlife standpoint was to use habitat restoration techniques to improve our trout populations on these impaired rivers. So first we would assess the conditions, and most of those conditions were pretty obvious, kind of a result of a legacy of conversion of willow bottoms and floodplains that had a lot of willow and woody species into hay meadows. So we first identified what conditions were limiting for those trout, in particular adult and quality size trout densities. So what could we do? First assess the conditions, and then once we've assessed them and kind of identified what conditions were limiting to those populations, maybe deep pools, presence of deep pools, or over widened channels, those kind of things go hand in hand, due to conversion of the floodplains to different types of grasses and stuff. But then we could increase the trout population. That was the goal, was to increase populations by implementing those habitat treatments. And so how are we going to implement those treatments on a limited budget? That's how we got this program off the ground, the Vocation Heavy Construction Technology program. As I said, so the goal through that program was multi-pronged. From the correctional side, we wanted to redirect the lives of these inmates. The goal was to, how can we help these guys get their feet under them to where they have a chance at being successful once they are done serving time. We had over 150 program graduates from this particular program, over about 20 years of projects that we did together. So I told you about the recidivism rate. That number fluctuated over time, but I think ultimately somewhere around 12% recidivism rate for those inmates that were not part of the program, and over 70% was our recidivism rate for the graduates of this program. It gave these guys self-confidence and growth, and ultimately changing their lives and their hearts. Like, that was a goal, was not just helping them with their external behavior, but how do we change the hearts of individuals so that they can get grounded and have some stability in their lives that would help them with guiding and directing them in their decisions outside of the prison system. I told you about how far what kind of projects we've done. So that's just a little summary of what I've already gone over. To give you an idea of the cost savings using the inmates, I don't know, you know, today's dollars, these are probably old figures, so you know, but this was all data we gathered from different major projects in Colorado. Some of these you might be familiar with or not. But we have a list of different costs, including some very recent costs. I guess the Colorado River, we just completed a project on the Kemp Breeze. Our program with the South Platte River using the inmates averaged about 19 to 21. I think it was around, it might be somewhere around $20 a linear foot to do the work that we did with the inmates. The reason why is the salary that the inmates got was around 60 cents an hour, but obviously they're in prison still. We had a lot of work and partnerships with other federal and state agencies that really believed in this program. So we had a lot of materials donated from the Forest Service or from the water districts or water consortiums like Denver Water and the city of Aurora. These different entities that were water management companies donated materials. So that obviously helped us. And then we used, we rented equipment from different, you know, companies like Wagner, those kind of places, rentals. It did help, and they gave us a discount also because they believed in the program and wanted to help these inmates succeed. But $19 an hour. I know you guys are all involved in restoration, so you're familiar with the expensive costs these days, especially now with inflation, how expensive things are. But it really was amazing how much we could accomplish using inmates and having a big, what we call the win-win-win situation, not just a win for each individual and then helping them get established, getting into a good job after they completed their time in prison, giving them skills, heavy construction operating skills, a win for Parks and Wildlife because we were getting such a good bargain to do stream restoration using the inmate system, and hopefully a win for the prison system because they weren't seeing these guys recommit crimes and come back to jail. I think I got another slide. Let's see. Is it just maybe frozen? So I guess just that's kind of what I wanted to share with you about the program. I had the privilege of working with 10 different years, different groups of these individuals that went through. I have wonderful memories with each of these different guys. We spent a lot of time together on the river, being able to share personally about each other's lives, about life, about what was important to us. You know, what is it that makes life exciting, or how, you know, what are some of the dreams and visions they had for their lives as they saw themselves in the future? What did their life look like? Was it spending time with their kids that were, you know, and their families still that they were going to return to? Was it getting a good job? Was it you know, making good decisions? There were a lot of conversations that we had, and it was an amazing time for me personally, not just doing the restoration work and what we were able to accomplish. I have tons of pictures. I didn't bring a lot of pictures today because I didn't want to emphasize so much the restoration side of things, but these guys were amazing. The labor that they would provide us and the hand labor, for instance, for doing tow wood, these guys were not afraid to get in the water, get in the channel, rearranging wood in this, you know, in underwater and kind of helping us. It was a messy, kind of very hard work, labor intensive job. These guys were amazing and wonderful. It was incredible what we were able to accomplish as a team. But if you're interested in more about the program and what we did, if you go to Colorado Parks and Wildlife website, we have a tab on our opening page on the Colorado Parks and Wildlife that says Learn at the top. Learn, Learn. Click on Learn. You'll see that there's a section on under research that's aquatics. If you go to aquatics and then to the Stream Habitat Investigations tab on the left, you'll see, you can click on that, and if you scroll down, you'll see some of the highlight on this program. You'll even see this picture, I think, on our website. Down in that section, you'll see this document. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a white paper that I wrote with details about this program. It's called the Vocation Heavy Construction Technology Program, a comprehensive plan, including program needs and future directions. So wrote that, and there's a lot more detail than what I covered today in that document. If you're interested in work, if you are interested in how to do this, what we did to get this off the ground. And then there's an article that was also published on this program in our Colorado Outdoors magazine called More Than a River. And it kind of is a neat story of how the program took off and what we did with the inmates. So, at this point, that's kind of what I want to cover, the gist, but is there some questions that I can answer? Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. I do have a question. So how's the program? Is it still an active program, or they disband? And do they just do stream restoration, or do they do other stuff?
That's a great question, Ken. Thanks for that question. So unfortunately now the program is no longer in existence as it was when I was there. There is still a program using inmates to do labor projects. They've done a lot of work on trails and on campgrounds, developing campgrounds in the national forest, closing mines, and then those kind of projects. I know there's still a labor program for that. The actual program that I was involved in doing this dedicated stream restoration is no longer in existence, unfortunately. Some things occurred when the program came under the umbrella of Colorado Correctional Industries, CCI. This is the company that kind of uses inmates to kind of mass produce license plates, and they actually run a dairy farm. For a while, they were running a hatchery on the facilities in Buena Vista for rainbow trout. They would take little fish that we had and rear them up. For some reasons that I won't get into, unfortunately, when the program came under that umbrella, there were some things that kind of went sour with the way that they were wanting to manage this program that caused the program then to not continue, at least from the Parks and Wildlife side. So, but other projects that this program accomplished, they did a massive mine reclamation project. I want to say near, it's like there's that Crooked Creek, I think it is. Crooked Creek, it's up near Pikes Peak. Anyway, they did a massive mine reclamation there, multi-million-dollar project that was incredible, just amazing, where they hauled away contaminated mine tailings and spoils, and then reclaimed it with clean fill and stuff. Anyway, huge project, lots of earth movement. And then they've also, like I said, they did a lot of work closing mines around the area of the Forest Service, and also even some fen restoration that was done in South Park, doing wetland restoration. So anyway, those are some other projects they've done. Thanks for that question, Ken. Anyone else have some questions about inmates and using inmates? Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Matt. So, what would your thoughts be on creating a program like this in a different location, whether it be something like Larimer County jails, or whether it be something like a federal prison service, is this something that would be easy to kind of create a program, or would it take years to develop? What is your general thoughts on that?
I don't know a ton about the other prison system kind of things, but in general, based on what we did with the Buena Vista Correctional Facility, I think the key is having willing partners. The key things are having someone in place, or some entity in place for providing opportunities for these guys to have a good paying job when they're done.
Yeah.
I think that's really key. Is what does it look like? What can they expect when they are done from graduating from a program in the prison system? It's having instructors that are looking at these inmates and their situations in a personal way, willing to interact with them personally, and really, I think, honestly, deal with their hearts on an individual basis, their individual needs. So a lot of it is so being willing to having some people who are involved with them that are willing to kind of get into their lives and talk about what are their issues, what are the things that you want to see changed in your life, or how can I help you? Mm-hmm. Give them some tools for how they can, basically, and bring them alongside. And if this is a spiritual part of things, but some kind of truth that they can come up to, and also find something that will help them with grounding themselves and finding a way to help them with making good decisions and give them a moral compass, I think, too.
Yeah. What do you think a program like this looks like without kind of personal mentorship? So we just provide a means or skill for somebody, but we don't try to mentor them through that. You think it's going to be able to be equally successful? You think it's going to be less successful? What's your general thoughts?
Well, personally, I think it would be less successful, very much.
Yeah.
But that's speaking from my own personal experience, because for me, I found that for my life, really, my success has come from having a relationship with God.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're in sharing your experiences, your relationship with God, with these men. These were inmates. So it's a little bit different than a lot of situations where you're asked maybe not to share some of the examples of your faith with others while on work. Can you talk a little bit about what it looked like to share with these men on a daily basis, or how that was changed on each day while you interacted with them?
Sure. I think most of the interactions I had were just simply talking about life. Like, how many kids do you have? Tell me about what you're looking forward to. What are your hopes and dreams? Simple conversations that are essentially kind of the same things that we have with people in our normal relationships, just talking about what are you looking forward to. Through those interactions, listening, hearing people, and hearing what's important to them, I think it's just natural to start talking about, what are ways that I can be successful, and what are ways that you've been successful, and what works for you. And so it's kind of natural that it kind of goes to areas like, hey, what works for you? How do you make good decisions in your life? And it's just personal. It's being very open and honest, and like sharing. I think that was something that I had to get over, was the stigma of working around inmates. Like, I think there's a lot of stigmas that go into that. Like, I was really nervous the first amount of time when I was working with these guys. I knew there were some people that had murdered people, but when I heard their stories, many of them were very sad stories. And honestly, like, Tom Bowen, who was the warden that worked with this program, he told me, he's like, Matt, we're all one bad decision away from winding up in prison ourselves, or being in this place. And that really changed my perspective. And frankly, like, for the types of individuals we worked with, you know, I could easily see how that's possible. And I understood that, you know, yeah, we are really only one bad decision away from a lot of these guys. They just got caught doing something. And
So
you know,
you have a strong personal relationships with all these guys. You send them Christmas cards.
no,
Kids' birthday parties.
not like that.
No.
No. But and many of them, to be honest, I think that after they graduated, they really wanted to put that part of their life behind them.
Yeah.
And they were ready to move forward. They were looking ahead to the future and ready to move on with their families or reestablishing their lives. Yeah.
So a lot of
We got a hand up here from Eric.
Oh, hand up. Okay.
Hey, Matt, I've heard a lot about you. Sounds like a great program. And the recidivism rate that you talked about was extraordinary. That talks a lot about the quality of the program. The guys that were in the program, did they already have a personal connection with the outdoors, or was this a new experience for them?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that question up. Eric, where are you from? Sorry, I just real quick.
Pennsylvania. I'm Dave's brother-in-law.
Oh, cool. Okay. Thanks, Eric. A great question. The guys that I worked with primarily were from urban areas. Like, they were from the city. A lot of these guys were, in fact, had crimes that things like, you know, I don't know, like fraud or online stuff that they, you know, committed scandals and things, swindling people for money and that kind of thing. So a lot of these guys, and then gang related activities. So most of these guys grew up in an urban spot. And I'll never forget, there was one inmate, I think his name was Aaron. He was this huge guy. He was kind of the typical thing you might see. He had, you know, biceps that were as big as my thighs. Huge guy, like just he could lift, you know, he just lift logs around like they're pieces of straw. And I'll never forget being out in on a project with him, and he saw his first snake in the grass at his feet. And when he saw that snake, I watched him jump about, I don't even know, 4 feet in the air, fly backwards, and scream. I mean, literally scream like one of my children would scream. And to see a large, you know, giant, big dude, big burly guy act that way was really funny. But it reminded me, no, most of these guys, they have no connection, had zero connection at all with working outdoors and in nature, which was one of the reasons why I think this program was so special, was because this working on rivers in the environment where, hey, you look around the landscape and you couldn't see enough. You saw, there were no highways, there were no other buildings around. It was a natural landscape. There's snow-capped peaks in the distance and gorgeous, like, fresh air. The experience for these guys of working in this space, I believe the contrast of being inside the prison, right, where it's like crowded and you're dealing with a lot of different people that many you probably don't want to have anything to deal with. You know, there's all this strife and pecking order stuff that goes on in the prison. Getting away from that, getting out into nature was I think a big part of what was successful about this program too. Was it exposed them, gave them space to think, have clear thoughts, and really admire and appreciate, I think, the awe and wonder that they were exposed to in being in nature and seeing what they were seeing. It was neat for them, you know. And if you don't mind, that does allow me to share a transition to one of my favorite verses. As I was going back over 10 years working with these guys, I would share a verse if I could once a week with the guys, or sometimes a little more often. But one of these was my favorite. Deals with this issue, Eric, of the natural connections that we see and that whole experience. So it's from Psalms, and it's Psalm 19. So David wrote this. And it says, here, I think you guys will appreciate this. It says, the heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their utterances to the end of the world. In them he has placed a tent for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber. It rejoices as a strong man to run his course. Its rising is from one end of the heavens, and its circuit to the other end of them. And there is nothing hidden from its heat. And so anyway, I just love this passage because it talks about how you don't need to speak words to people for them to see the glory of God. When you go out into nature and you spend time, in this case, months working out in nature, it's hard not to see his hand and see order in what you're doing. And I think that brought about a lot of peace for these guys too. Just being around and exposed to the awe and wonder that they saw in nature.
And very humbling, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. So, good question. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Other questions?
See if we have any other hands. So, yeah, I mean, one thing I was leading into is, you know, your relationships with these guys weren't long-term. But there's value in humanizing them and helping them understand what it's like to be a human again after being incarcerated. And I think between the humanization of an interaction with somebody that's outside, that's making a decision to be working with them, and then also the awe and wonderment is probably a good part of why that recidivism rate has decreased so much.
Yes, yes. I would say that's definitely was a big part of it.
So do you have a dream of continuing on with programs like this in the future?
I would love to see something like this or be a part of something like this again. It was very, sometimes I think you can appreciate this in your life. You don't know what you had until it's gone, kind of thing. And I took I think the first decade of my career with Parks and Wildlife doing this very much for granted. But looking back, the combination of being able to be creative and work on rivers, which is why we're all here. We love to see rivers in their natural state, encourage the river to become to be, you know, going in a certain direction toward becoming more of a natural system, seeing the results of vegetation or fish habitat and fish numbers increase, watching the positive almost feedback, right, as you start things in a good direction and you see kind of a cycle of positive change in rivers is great. But when you couple that with working with individuals who you have an opportunity to share your life with, and me learn from them about life as well, and kind of encourage each other in this journey we call life together, that's really amazing. And so yeah, so I definitely miss that, and I'd like to see something like that. I'd like to be a part of something like that, absolutely, again. One thing that's really special, I will say, for me is the individual from the Buena Vista Correctional Facility. His name was Tom Bowen. Who really was the main reason why this program was successful. We still get together once a week, and we are able to read. We've been going through the book of John in the Bible together, but we still get together once a week, pray together, read together out of the Word here, and help encourage each other. And honestly, that has been one of the greatest things out of this whole experience that I can say is that's still ongoing. So there's parts of this program that haven't even died for me yet. It's still continuing.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I would argue the secret to successful river restoration is who you can share it with.
Yes, very good. Very good. That's
I
true.
ripped that off from a movie yesterday. Yeah.
Well, I hope this has been interesting to you guys. This is a little different, non-traditional stuff, right? And it's not the fun part about this is we realize that the work that we do, it's not just all about dollars and cents. Yes, it's great that we all can make a living doing this. It's incredible. But it's also about what can we do to help change other people's lives in a positive way. And part of that is you can take comfort that as you restore rivers, you're connecting people to nature. And that very thing in and of itself is powerful. But also we have a chance to work with people sometimes and use that restoration itself as an activity to help encourage and each other directly in our lives. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how we reach out, we want to help others, and then we realize that we find restoration in our lives,
Yeah.
and that we're helped more than we could ever imagine by just walking in obedience for the desire to help others.
Definitely.
And I see that in your life, so I really appreciate you sharing this week.
Well, yeah, and I want to thank Parks and Wildlife for I can't take credit for this program. It was people before me. I just stepped in after people had already gotten things going, and I was lucky to have another 10 years of doing this after those folks had kind of left. So neat stuff.
Right. Are there any more questions this morning?
Hey, Matt, it's Billy.
Hey, Billy.
How's it going? Hi, Dave. Dave, can you hear me?
I can, yeah, man.
How you doing?
Good, I'm doing great, Billy. It's great to see
All
you.
right. Yes, likewise. You touched the last couple of minutes on this program. Why doesn't it continue, or why can't it maybe continue other places? And I've talked to Matt years ago about this, actually tried to incorporate a project up here, but the major limiting factor to one of these programs is the distance from the facility. You have to have a holding area. I think a program like this could really grow, without question. I mean, have this kind of labor and these, such hard workers, and especially if you could, reach into their soul and reach to them and start to establish relationships with them and help them in their healing process. But, like we couldn't do it up here. The work would have to be within an hour or so from the facility. And that's tough. So, I mean, I think certainly there's probably an opportunity, but it would take a massive effort at a very high political scale to maybe start to think about establishing satellite facilities that they could return to during a project in different parts, maybe it is Laramie, but where are your focal points around an area for restoration and opportunities, wetlands enhancement, maybe away from rivers, or you talk about trails, but there has to be facilities to get them back to. And I think, we look at the money that's out there now with the infrastructure bills and things. I mean, there's the politicians that are making money available on a pretty big scale here in the future. So I don't know, maybe a good project in retirement to try and tackle or something, but but that, that's fairly limiting to projects like this, continuing.
Good point, Billy. You're 100% accurate there. What were you going to say, Dave?
Yeah, I wonder, in the correctional facilities, they're always like a lot of county facilities have places where they can hold over state and federal prisoners inside their county correctional facilities. So you wonder if you could come alongside a county correctional facilities and have county correctional facilities hold people overnight, so they can be within an hour.
Yeah.
And create a relationship. I know I have a uncle that was retired from the federal pen service, and they had done that exact thing in Brandy County, Oklahoma for years because of over too many people being in a federal pen. So they would basically contract out space from the county facility just to hold people that were less violent. So
that makes a lot of sense. That's how we got to think. We got to come up with some creative ways of, you know, how can we make this work? That you know, out of the box type of solutions, right? That might allow this to expand.
Yeah, what you said, Billy, is true. There's a lot of money going to green infrastructure. And if we can tie river restoration into restoration of individuals, I just see so much more money being available for river restoration in the future, because in general, people aren't writing news podcasts about how how they have to fix the environment. They're talking about mental health issues and shootings and things like that. And if we can try to tie in mental health treatment and recovery to ecosystem restoration, I think that's a super valuable opportunity for our culture.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's not just inmates, right? It's our kids. It's, you know, the more that we have become addicted to these, I'm talking about my kids. I got 4 kids. Anybody else out there have kids? This right here, like, the more we can get them away from this and out there in nature and spending time in nature, I think that's a positive thing. I mean, look at all, I mean, you could say that about your own lives too. I'm sure all of us can. So it's not just about the inmates.
Well, if anybody else, it's 7 o'clock. So if nobody else has a question, we're gonna close in a word of thanks.
Can I share one more
Yes.
verse? I have one more passage I want to share with you guys. This was my other the other verse or passage I really like to share with these guys. It's from Isaiah 55, and it's about remember, these guys are in prison. They didn't have a lot, they don't have any money, right? They don't have a lot of resources. But I love this because this actually encourages myself as well. This is why I shared it with them. But it says, ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight yourself in abundance. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen that you may live, and I will make an everlasting covenant with you, according to the faithful mercies shown to David. I just love that verse. Like, it doesn't take, we can still find satisfaction and joy in life, and it's not from all the material stuff. And maybe I'm getting a little ahead here with Christmas, but look to God. Find your satisfaction in him and what he provides. He can satisfy your heart, and that's really what counts.
Yeah, I think the tire salesman and theologian A.W. Tozer said, you know, about the idea of being hungry for God. I have a hunger to be hungry for God. And the idea of sometimes we just don't find ourselves really hungry for things of God or things beyond us, but just a hunger to want to be hungry for it sometimes helps us too.
Definitely.
So,
thanks, you guys. I appreciate you letting me share this experience with you this morning.
Thank you. Great message.
Hey, thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
You guys, thanks for letting us join together here today. Help us to be amazed by what you allow us to see in nature. Help us to be amazed by the interpersonal relationships that you give us. Help us to just be amazed by what you allow us to be a part of. There's a lot of hurt in this world. There's a lot of fight in this world. There's a lot of abuse. And help us to be people that point others towards the goodness of you in this season. We're amazed by you, and help us to live in ever more amazement. Amen.
Amen.
See you, folks.